The first-class cabin of Flight 447 smelled of leather and expensive cologne. Warm amber lighting, cashmere blankets, champagne in crystal glasses. Everything designed to make the wealthy feel untouchable. The flight attendants moved with rehearsed grace, smiling at each passenger as though they were the only person in the world. And then Maria Reyes walked through the cabin door, and the choreography quietly broke. She was 29, though grief had aged her well beyond that tonight, pressing into the hollows beneath her eyes, pulling the corners of her mouth downward into a permanent, exhausted sorrow. She wore a pale gray hoodie, thin at the elbows from too many washes. Her dark hair was knotted messily at her neck, pressed against her chest, with the fierce desperation of a woman holding the last thing she had left. Was her son Noah, 2 years old, flushed with fever, his small body heavy and limp against her shoulder. She was in the wrong seat. She realized it the moment she checked the armrest number, her eyes dropping to the boarding pass crumpled in her fist. 3A. She was standing in 3A. Her ticket said 34A. Her mind was still back in the Chicago hospital room where her mother had taken her last breath 48 hours ago. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Wrong seat. I'm so sorry." But her legs wouldn't cooperate. Noah stirred and made a small, miserable sound, and she tightened her arms around him. The movement caught her carry-on on the overhead bin latch. The bag fell. Crackers, a paperback, and a folded piece of paper, her mother's death certificate, because she'd had nowhere else to put it, scattered across the aisle. The paper slid to a stop against the polished shoe of the man in 3B. He looked down at it. Then he looked up at her. His name was Daniel Hartwell, though the name would have meant nothing to Maria. To the financial press, he was a quiet titan, founder of a logistics software company that had transformed supply chains across 3 continents, worth north of $4 billion, famously private. He was 52, lean and gray-templed, wearing a simple navy sweater and dark trousers. No watch. No performance. He did not call the flight attendant. He reached down, picked up the folded paper, and held it out to her. "Here," he said simply. Maria took it with trembling fingers. "I'm so sorry. I'm in the wrong... Where are you going?" 34A, he nodded once. He looked at the empty seat beside him. 3C, unpurchased on this flight. He looked at Noah's flushed face. He looked at Maria's hands, which would not stop shaking. "Sit down," he said. She blinked. "I beg your pardon?" "You're going to drop him. Just sit down for a moment. It wasn't an order." It was the tone of someone who had assessed a situation and arrived at the simplest solution without drama. Maria sat, not because she was told to, but because her legs had made the decision for her. A flight attendant appeared at her elbow almost immediately, her smile warm, but her eyes telegraphing alarm. "Ma'am, this section is..." "She's with me." Daniel said it without looking up from his phone. Quietly, completely. The way a person speaks when they have never once needed to say something twice. The flight attendant hesitated for exactly 1 second. Then she smiled, genuinely this time, and withdrew. Maria stared at the man beside her. "You don't have to do this. I'll go back. Take as long as you need." He placed his phone face down on the tray table. A deliberate gesture, the gesture of a person choosing to be present. "How old is he?" 2. She smoothed Noah's hair from his forehead. He was burning. "He's had a fever since yesterday." "Viral," the doctor said. "Nothing serious. But he won't stop crying when I put him down, and I just..." Her voice cracked without warning. She pressed her lips together and looked at the oval window and breathed through her nose until the pressure receded. "I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm telling you this." "Because you haven't slept," he said. "And you're alone, and you've been holding it together for days. And sometimes a stranger is the safest person to talk to." She looked at him then. Really looked. He wasn't watching her with pity or the expression she had learned to dread, the one that said, "I feel terrible for you, but please don't make this my problem." He was simply looking back, steady, unhurried. "When did you last eat?" he asked. The question was so unexpected she almost laughed. "Yesterday, maybe." There was food at the hospital, sandwiches. She frowned. I don't think I ate them. He signaled the flight attendant without ceremony. 2 dinner menus, please. A glass of water. And something warm for the boy. Soup, if you have it. Maria opened her mouth to protest and found she had nothing left to protest with. Noah had turned his face toward the sound of Daniel's voice with the open curiosity of a feverish child encountering someone unexpectedly calm, his bright eyes blinking slowly. Assessing. Giraffe, Noah announced, because he had recently discovered that naming things was the most important activity available to a person. That's right, Daniel said seriously, as though this were a significant and accurate observation. Noah stared at him a moment longer, conducting whatever internal audit 2-year-olds perform on strangers. Then he reached out one small, hot hand and wrapped it around Daniel's index finger. Daniel looked down at the small hand. Something shifted in his expression, something quiet and private, gone before it could be named. He did not pull his hand away. They flew north and west through the dark. The food came. Maria ate mechanically at first, then with something approaching gratitude. Noah accepted the soup with the grave concentration of a small person doing something important. Twice he reached for Daniel's sleeve instead of his mother's. Twice Daniel let him. You're heading home to Seattle? Daniel asked, somewhere over Montana. Yes. We've been in Chicago for... She stopped, then continued plainly because she was past the point where softening it helped. My mother was sick. She passed 2 days ago. I'm sorry. She was 61. 6 weeks from diagnosis to the end. Maria looked at Noah, sleeping against her arm. She was my last family. My parents came from El Salvador before I was born. There's no one else. Just me and him. The words settled between them. Daniel was quiet for a moment. My mother raised me alone, he said. Philadelphia. 2 jobs, sometimes 3. I didn't understand until much later how completely extraordinary that was. What it cost her. A pause. She died 6 years ago. I still reach for the phone on Sunday mornings. Maria absorbed this. She must have been proud of you. She was proud that I called every week, he said. The rest of it she found mostly baffling. Maria almost smiled. Noah slept. The cabin lights dimmed. At some point, she couldn't have said when, Maria fell asleep too. She woke to the announcement of final descent. The cabin was brightening. Noah breathed quietly against her, cooler now. Daniel's seat was empty. On her tray table sat a sealed white envelope. She opened it. Inside, a handwritten note on plain notepaper. You are doing something I have seen very few people do well, keeping another person's world intact while your own is falling apart. That is a strength entirely your own. Enclosed is something practical. Use it however it helps most. Medical care, time to breathe, a moment to stop. No conditions. No repayment expected. My mother had a phrase for hard days. I'm passing it to you. 1 more day. That's all you have to do. 1 more day, Maria. DH, the check, was folded beneath the note. She read the number 3 times before she believed it. Enough to cover Noah's medical bills for the next 18 months. Every unopened envelope she'd been afraid to touch. She pressed the back of her hand to her mouth and breathed. A flight attendant appeared softly at her side. Mr. Hartwell asked me to make sure you had any help you needed through the terminal. Maria nodded. She couldn't speak yet. She gathered Noah onto her hip, picked up her bag, and walked off the plane in the pale silver light of a Seattle morning, carrying a sleeping child, a death certificate, and a note from a man who had once been a small boy in Philadelphia, watching his mother hold the world together with both hands, and who had never once allowed himself to forget what that particular kind of exhausted looks like. Outside the terminal, Noah opened his eyes and looked up at her face. "Mama sad?" he asked. She pressed her lips to his forehead, cool now, the fever finally breaking, and held him there. "No, baby," she said. "Mama's okay." And for the first time in 6 weeks, she meant it. Some people move through the world quietly, leaving everything different in their wake. They do not announce their kindness or wait for acknowledgement. They simply see what is needed and provide it, in the way of people who have never forgotten what it felt like to need it themselves. Daniel Hartwell had built his company on the principle that the most powerful systems are the ones that work without being noticed. He had learned this not in a boardroom, but in a small apartment in Philadelphia, watching a woman do the impossible every day without complaint, without audience, without ever letting him see how afraid she was. He had never forgotten her face during those years. He recognized it still, in waiting rooms, in checkout lines, in the aisle of a first-class cabin at 35,000 feet. He recognized it because he had once been the reason for it, and he had promised himself long ago that whenever he saw it again,